We condemn in the strongest terms the Russian Federation's illegitimate attempts to organize Russian presidential elections in temporarily occupied areas within the internationally recognized territory of Ukraine. Holding elections in another UN member state's territory without its consent is in manifest disregard for the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. We reiterate the UN General Assembly's call to all states, international organizations, and the United Nations specialized agencies not to recognize any alteration by the Russian Federation of the status of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, as well as of any or all of the Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, or Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine, and to refrain from any action or dealing that might be interpreted as recognizing any such altered status.
Any annexation of a state's territory by another state resulting from the threat or use of force is a violation of the principles of the United Nations Charter and international law. Yet, that is what the Russian Federation has attempted in Ukraine, causing in the process unspeakable suffering and destruction. Thank you, Mr. President. The principle, Russia's intention to conduct presidential elections from today, 15 March, until 17 March in areas of Ukraine under its control are unacceptable. The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine has documented that past so-called referenda and local elections have been conducted in a coercive environment. Under international humanitarian law, the occupying power, in this case, the Russian Federation, is obligated to uphold the laws of Ukraine in the occupied territories.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me start by thanking Undersecretary. As early voting for the Russian elections enter its final days, this much is clear. Russia's tactics of holding sham elections in Ukraine's occupied territory is, in fact, a pattern. General DiCarlo, for briefing us on the current situation in Ukraine. Let's call this what it is. It's a blatant propaganda exercise undertaken in the hopes of somehow strengthening Russia's false claim to the parts of Ukraine it illegally invaded. To hold Russian elections in Ukraine's sovereign territory is proof of the tie between the Kremlin's external aggression and internal repression. It is an affront to the UN's Charter principles that underpin global security and stability. Ukraine's temporarily occupied territory and Ukraine, who call, we continue to condemn this sham election in Ukraine's temporarily occupied territory for what it is, one in a pattern of failed attempts to justify the unjustifiable.
Thank you, President. I thank Undersecretary DiCarlo for her briefing. Ukrainian civilians in Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Crimea are being forced and intimidated into taking part in a sham election. As the General Assembly has made clear, including in October 2022, when 143 states voted to condemn Russia's attempted illegal annexation, these regions are part of the internationally recognized territory of Ukraine. The people in these territories voted overwhelmingly to join an independent Ukraine in 1991. There is no popular support for Russian rule, historically or today. President, I must first address the latest appalling Russian missile. These elections are a sham because of a simple truth. You cannot hold legitimate elections in someone else's country. These elections are a violation of the UN Charter and a fraud, nothing more. They will not be recognized, just as we will never recognize Russia's attempted annexation of Ukrainian territory.
Mr. President, distinguished The sham election process in the temporarily occupied territories is marked with intimidation and coercion of the local population. The Russian occupiers have elaborated a lot of means to reach this end. Among them, threats against life, illegal detention, denial of access to health care and social services, threats of deportation and deprivation of property. We should not forget that these actions take place at gunpoint. Members of the Security Council. We therefore call on the international community to resolutely condemn Russia's illegitimate intention to imitate presidential elections in the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories, to refrain from recognizing the results of these elections, and to impose sanctions on those involved in their organization and conduct.
Of respect for territorial integrity and the political independence of states.